Welcome to our online YouTube audience. We've just got our first stream going on now. We are live with our director, Patrick Battle. We also do This Week in the Garden. We've got a radio show at livingwebfarms.org too. You can check out more of that for lots more from Pat live on the air. John Henry Nelson was scheduled to do a Victory Garden workshop here this morning, and he had a last-minute major problem with his presentation and needs to reschedule that. But we are talking with Pat, who is a wonderful, deep, vast resource on this topic, and we were just getting into what we're going to be talking about with Victory Gardens, the history, and what we can do to adapt that concept now for maximum resilience. We also have a brand new channel that is featuring short form content in association with the Organic Growers School. Pat has been contributing lots of great videos there, and we're also going to be hearing from other wonderful luminaries of gardening, organic farming, and resilience in our region on that channel. So check it out. It is featured at the top of our Living Web Farms channel. I'm Lisa Soledad Almaraz, the Multimedia Director for Living Web Farms. Taylor here is my media team person, and we shoot and produce all the media and videos on Living Web. So everything you get to see on the channel, thank you so much for your wonderful interest and participation. So Pat, here we are, Victory Gardens. We're going to still have the workshop later, but let's talk about what they really are, what that means, and what it means for us now.
Okay, so yeah, Victory Gardens have a long history in the United States, and they've been, I can't deny it, they've been heavily tied to our efforts in wars, and there's been some question about calling them Victory Gardens because of that, because rarely has justice ever come from wars, and for sure we don't have a perfect history on that realm either. As far as I can tell, no large country ever has. People tend to settle things to work better for them, and yeah, we can go there with that, but I can tell you that my personal family history, the stories I've heard from elders in my family was they planted Victory Gardens to be in support of their communities, to share food with their neighbors, to take care of each other, and to have some comfort at a time of great distress. And I think that's a big part of what the victory is about. The victory is our getting that we are tied to nature and we depend on it. And we're victorious when we come to rely on those values. And there's stories that are real strong, and there's some truth to them of us doing that as a nation in war, but there's lots of contradictions. There aren't nearly as many contradictions in nature. And that's why I don't have any problem with calling it a victory garden, because it's about us being victorious over our faults, over what divides us, over our inability to come together and connect back to what we're nurtured by, what we're of. And it's just so natural to me. I wasn't at all surprised to see this incredible rush to grow food. It happens every time we have to sit back and consider where we are and what our future beholds. Because all of us deeply know that our future is intimately tied to the natural world and that we will not thrive without that connection. We understand that we have lots of infrastructure that provides us a lot of separation from nature and a lot of distraction and a lot of pleasure, but one that infrastructure that perhaps also separates us from some of the most basic pleasures. And at a time when we can't go out and avail ourselves of those, those pleasures. And hey, I don't want to at all put down the local restaurant community. I love going out to eat or anything like that. The reality is that there is so much joy and such real flavor and such real nutrition to experience in your backyard. And that's what Victory Gardens have been about. They don't have to be large. They don't have to be grown by experts. Everybody's a natural. We all quickly figure out by biofeedback, by the plants communicating to us, how to work with nature to create some of our own, actually not create, but engender, to facilitate the production of some of our own sustenance. We, of course, are doing very little compared to what the plants are doing, to what nature does for us. And so,
On your environment, Pat. I mean, the amount of forageable food, especially here in Western North Carolina, is amazing. And I know it changes by region. Wherever you go, there's different forageables, there's different things you can do. And by having more native species, you can really help your local insect population. And it's like, to me, I'm fine with uh, all kinds of changing of words and meaning, and it's almost like, really, it's a resilience garden. And the resilience garden it's like a cornerstone for human relationship with nature. And then you tie into your forest edge or whatever your ecosystem and bioregion is, and then you get into your local forageables, and then you get into your medicinals, and you just start to expand that web of awareness. And then when you meet your other local farmers and growers, it's like a whole new world, like Barbara Kingsolver did with her family, eating in a local way for a year. And just, there's so many more relationships that open up. And I've been watching that flower actually here in our community. We have a very rich food community, and it's been amazing watching people realize how they can stay connected and get fresh local food, and also start growing their own food. And I'm just so happy at the huge jump in interest we've had here on the channel and around the world. And our local gardening and farming places are also getting a lot more interest. So it's just really great to see people having that concept of really resilience at home again.
well, indeed, it's one of the things that I really love noticing was right at the beginning of when we were getting the instructions to stay apart, and I don't really like the concept. I think Margot made that mention of that on our video we did about Chinese medicinals. I don't like to call it social distancing. It's physical distancing. We still can be very social. We're being social right now, and humans are social, and that means we talk to each other. Maybe we can't hug right now, but we are still connected. Anyway, right at the beginning of our having to distance ourselves and separate ourselves, so that we could deny this pathogen oxygen, so to speak, there was a group in Fairview that wanted to start a community garden. And I remember us having a staff discussion and all that, and it's like, okay, well, we should check with them and make sure that if we can get them plants or anything. And I don't know how that proceeded, actually. I didn't keep track of that, but I noticed that just the other day they were asking about where to donate food. So that's what, 5 weeks, 6 weeks later, and they're donating food, and that's the power of us stepping outside our houses, looking at the world and saying we can be part of it. And you're right, so right, Lisa. There's possibilities that our food chain will be disrupted to some degree, and that's a scary concept. And it's great that we're all growing food. It's great that we think about that. It's great if we think about supporting farmers so that doesn't happen, and making sure that we let our leaders know that we want to ensure that our food system is kept resilient and made more resilient. But I thought to myself, it's like, well, I'm not going hungry anytime soon, because the world is full of food. And it's true. I mean, there's like, every time I look at what video to do, there's always a video about what's new to eat in the garden, And yesterday, as I walked back from checking our spelt crop on our North Farm, I walked by my favorite patch of smilax or catbrier and got to just grab handfuls of those luscious young tips that are so nutritious the deer are thriving on right now. So yeah, there's loads of food out there, and we'll keep covering that on the Resilience Daily channel. The whole point of that channel is to get you snippets of information that inspire you to keep connecting yourself. That channel is about inspiration. It's about giving you tools so you feel empowered to keep being taught by nature, because that is our number one source of information. And that's what I love so much about the Victory Garden movement. And I don't want to take energy from that movement by discussing what to call it. Resilience Garden, Victory Garden, it doesn't matter. It's about people getting outside of their houses and letting the world teach them, and that is the most powerful thing that we can do as we look at how do we bring sanity to our lives. Nature is not, disrupted. I mean, it's disrupted by us, but it tends to the wisdom of its own organization, which is to enhance life in every way possible. Usually that's through diversity. That's usually the way that most life is happening at once. Once in a while, you have stable forests that aren't very diverse, but by and large, nature is really diverse. And we can experience that ourselves and be empowered to get connected to it and to make sure that we can take care of ourselves and our neighbors.
I've
And
been
that's,
very inspired by my animal communities, my bird communities. I rescued all the baby praying mantises, finally hatched out, got those taken care of, and the birds have been just flying in, swooping in. I've got some high quality bird food and hummingbird, my first hummingbird last week, and the first bat in the garden. So, and then all the other beautiful butterflies and everything coming out, and I'm just thrilled at the natural community. And of course, farmscaping increases that community, and we provide habitat. I'm excited that the milkweed's coming back. I'll have some monarchs heading this way, and that community is really essential. And Pat, I was thinking, even if someone isn't growing a garden, right? If they're connected and other people growing gardens are reaching out, having that high quality organic food. Of course, we talk and teach about organic growing of food and farming and gardening. And it just might be that one little difference between a neighbor getting sick or not. Maybe there's an elderly neighbor who can't really grow their garden as well anymore, or maybe they're, don't have one. And of course, we get covered up in certain things at certain times of the year, and just to be able to share and to connect with people, not only socially is a balm for wellness, but also just having that fresh food, just sharing it more and more around neighborhoods and communities is just that little step to being healthy and well.
I couldn't agree more. There's tons of science, I think, that documents that, that our immune system responds to many things, including, our social well-being, including our emotional health, so it's, that food, that whatever contribution the neighbor can pass on to their neighbor who can't grow their own food is going to resonate health-wise with that neighbor that's not able to do it themselves on so many levels. The nutritional level is going to be huge. Just the pleasure of being gifted by a neighbor, of being seen, of being taken care of, Lisa, just today, I was browsing the news, and in The Guardian, there was an article about the real Lord of the Flies.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I already,
yeah.
I soak up the news like a sponge every
morning. Right, yeah.
So yeah,
basically,
what really happens when you put 6 boys alone on an island for a
6
while.
boys who, were raised in a system of faith. Let's give it credit where credit's due. I was raised in a Catholic school education, pretty strict. I'm not going to say I don't have my problems with it, but I will give that values were inculcated. People did get certain values, which it's not, you don't just need a Catholic school to get those, but you do somehow as a society need to pass on values. Values that include respect for each other, values that include the fact that everybody deserves sustenance, that everybody needs to take care of each other, and those were the values that those boys landed on that island with, and that island sounds pretty scary. They barely had water for months, and yet 15 months later, when they were rescued, they were in great health. They even had set the bone of a broken leg, of one of the boys that had fallen. And it was a perfect set, it all worked. And they basically had it figured out. When there wasn't enough rain, they each got a sip in the morning, they got a sip of water at night. They figured out that they worked together to do well, and they interfaced with nature completely, and they were completely healthy and thriving, and that's a real life story compared to the fictional story, which is, if you read that article, you'll learn that the author of that, Golding, I guess was his last name, I'm forgetting his first name, basically had a pretty unhappy life and a pretty dark view of the world, and that's what he gave us, and so we don't have to listen to those narratives. We can pay attention to the history of how people, when they aren't disrupted by power struggles, by some people trying to control more resources, actually work together with nature to be nurtured and to thrive and take care of each other. And I think it's not accidental that, we just started having workshops and talking about trying to create mutual aid networks. And then in response to this, pandemic, the concept of mutual aid has taken off like wildfire. There was an editorial in the New York Times, that emphasized the concept of mutual aid, and mutual aid is a concept that is about the fact that mutual aid is the natural system. It's how the world actually works, you know. And we've all heard those stories. We all get it. You know, the lions are in mutual aid with their prey, you know. I'm sure the individual prey that gets eaten doesn't feel that way, you know, but the overall health of the herd thrives because of predation, you know, and that is a lesson that happens everywhere, and you will learn that lesson over and over again, Lisa, in your garden. Just this past Thursday, Greta and I were looking at places to plant herbs. You know, we want to grow lots and lots of medicinal herbs. And we went to one kind of out of the way place in our network of farms, and there was a patch of Soledad. And, you know, it's like, oh, look at this. And then I looked down, and then my favorite, the red aphids that show up on the goldenrod, they're probably goldenrod aphids. So I checked with Richard McDonald, my entomologist friend. He said they could be the red morph of a tobacco aphid. But as he said, it doesn't matter either way, they're getting eaten. Because when we looked at these Soledad on their stems covered up with red aphids, what did we see? Of course, which I knew was going to happen. Ladybug larvae, syrphid fly larvae, all kinds of predation, you know,
Yeah,
all kinds of balance.
You always say the little aphid steakhouse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, and that is the way the world works, you know, and the aphids are doing their part too, you know. I mean, the reality is this virus is horrible for us right now. And yet viruses are how we evolve, you know. They are the genetic information movers, you know, and that's happening with those plants. Those aphids are transmitting viral diseases to those plants. Those plants, by and large, thrive because they're not out of the natural system. They don't really get hurt that much by the aphids. The predators come in and knock the population back down. Balance continues. But there is now some new genetic information in that plant, and it may very well not be expressed anytime soon, but that is a major way that we move forward genetically, you know, and so we want to get that.
Yeah, it's also a major way that we precariously go careening down the slippery slope of releasing viruses all over the world by invading nature. And what I love right now is being underscored is that the need to protect nature is that the more that we are, you know, clear cutting and deforesting places and things like that, that we are then allowing all of these different viruses and things to be out there and become more susceptible to them. And so by protecting nature and having more natural living systems in our gardens, in our homes, in our whole way that we're living in connection to the earth is going to keep us healthy and well as the planet. So important right now. I was just having a whole article that we were featuring on the show this week on that.
Right, well, exactly. And indeed, you know, the situation we were looking at with that Soledad was a relatively natural system, and that aphid population was stable. And it's very likely that whatever genetic information, you know, was passed into those plants through those aphids isn't going to be necessary for evolution at the moment, and is not going to result in an outbreak.
Oh yeah, no, that's the opposite, right?
Right, yeah, right.
I just love it that we're being encouraged urgent now to protect nature so that we don't keep unleashing all these pandemic type things going on.
Right, so I actually wrote a piece on this for our first newsletter after the request that we all self-quarantine and all, you know, stay at home. And it was basically saying that, yeah, that no matter what the origin of this virus, you know, it's likely that it was because of us pushing nature too hard. It doesn't matter if that's true or not for this one. Don't need to go there. There is no doubt that we are pushing into nature in a way that we're exposing ourselves to novel viruses that we wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. And they are regulators. In their natural system, where they are in the natural system, they're not a pathogen. But as you move in and expose yourselves to them, they become a pathogen. And the example I used, one that I love from Lynn Margolin, was she described herds of herbivores doing their migration and coming into an area that's in deep drought, needing to eat anyways, so overgrazing very heavily in an area that's in deep drought. By overgrazing, they create a lot of dust, and they kick up these clouds of dust. Lo and behold, in that dust are anthrax spores. All of those grazers die. The grasslands did not get grazed to a point of degradation. The animals became fertilizer, the rains came back, and the next grazing animals come through and are fine, you know. And that anthrax, yes, it's a pathogen, but it's also a regulator, you know, and we have to understand that. I said that to my old boss at the Highland Lake Inn, and he said, boy, now that's an article. I just said, nature's full of regulators, and he said, now that is an article. And it is. We want to understand that if we don't regulate ourselves, nature will regulate us. We are of nature, and we cannot survive without her. And if she needs to, you know, use other parts of nature to get us back into a position where we're part of the system rather than overriding it, she will, you know. So here's hoping that we, and I think it sounds like some people are getting that more. People are, you know, appreciating how much cleaner the air is and understanding that, you know, we, you know, have pushed ourselves to a point where we're exposing ourselves to these viruses. And I'm hoping that you know, a new ethic comes from this, you know, an ethic of understanding our place and trying to figure out how to enjoy, you know, a lifestyle that is similar to the one we have, but isn't so extractive and destructive and doesn't bring us to the brink quite so much as we have so far.
Right. It's like all of these threads of biodiversity really are the tapestry of life, woven so intricately and so intelligently, far beyond our capability, that when we just rip at it, you know, clear cut a forest, or just, you know, mine, you know, dam a whole river, clog a whole ecosystem, or just kill a bunch of various types of wildlife, we're just tearing away big chunks of it. But when we cultivate our relationship with nature in balance and respect, and inviting the life to participate and helping to grow the habitat and protect the habitats of native species, then we really are able to reweave those threads. I feel that that is our ultimate really purpose, is to be earth stewards here, to follow our heart, our passion, and to work with nature. And certainly nature's motto is abundance, pure abundance, and it's up to us to share. So that's what we always promote at Living Web Farms. We've got so many great things to help. I encourage people to really search through, because we've got a huge library now. And Pat, we talk about resilience lately, and the ability to bounce back and adapt, really being adaptogenic, right? And I was so happy to find, as someone I want to share with our audience and with you here today, at our local Asheville French Broad Food Co-op. It's a nonprofit grocery store here with a great community, all organic produce. You can be a member, shop there or not, it's great. I found this little book, and the book is titled Under Pressure. I don't really like the title of the book, but I love what it's about: Herbs for Resilience.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just
Mm-hmm.
talking about herbs for resilience with Joe Hollis of Mountain Farm and Gardens and Mountain Herbs. He's a great Chinese medicinal herbal expert and wonderful, wonderful, really luminary in our region for knowing of his Chinese herbs and giving us. We're going to have a fantastic whole video on that just about to be published. That's already with Margot Rossi as well, who is also a Chinese medicine wellness expert and acupuncturist. But this little book, Herbs for Resilience, is really great. It's very short. It's a homemade book. You can tell it's just a little booklet, you know, that's put together here. And I love it because it gives you the herbs. And I want to encourage folks in their victory garden, as we're doing, or whatever you want to call it, right, in your gardens, get those home gardens growing, right, and inspire others to get your medicinal garden in there as well. It is so much fun, and you can grow many of these things. And so, Pat, I'm gonna read off the herbs here. It's not a long list of these resilience herbs, and many of them we did discuss in the Chinese herbs and wellness video that we have coming up with Joe and Margot and you, Pat. So we start out with ashwagandha, holy basil, reishi, which is of course a mushroom, blue vervain, hawthorn, again heart medicine, garden sage, motherwort, milky oats, European wood betony, lavender, St. John's wort, and rose. Now, most of these are adaptogens, highly adaptogenic. Now, we don't include ginseng in there, we don't include some others, but this is a basic herbs for resilience, ways to help your immune system stay strong, to help you relate to stress in a way that is calmer and easier for your system. So, very interesting, Pat. And it's got a really great basic description of what it is, where to find it, how to cultivate it, the parts used, and how to prepare it, and dosage. And it's just a wonderful little book.
Well, and it gives us the message that the answers are in nature to so much of what befuddles us, you know. And it's interesting, there's that list of adaptogens, and I didn't know some of them as adaptogens, and I would add so many others to it. one that is so easy to grow that I love for so many different reasons is lemon balm. You know,
Yes.
lemon balm is so easy to grow. I have a dear friend and at one time coworker, Chip Hope, who every time he sees me reminds me of me mentioning to him that he might not want to put lemon balm in a bed. We were running a garden for a community garden for a housing development, Mountain Air, and you know, he didn't listen to me, and it took up about a third of the garden of the bed, you know, and so he always like sees me and kind of reminds me of that mistake that he made, you know, and laughs about it. But what I always want to tell him is, because he did that, I was able to, you know, once those folks had left for the summer, and some other folks passed through, and the woman of the couple was in chemotherapy and was being plagued by shingles, and I was able to take a knife to that bunch of lemon balm, which was going to be frosted any day anyways, cut out back a huge armful of it and said, just drink this tea as much as you can, you know. And the next year, her husband pulled me over on the side of the road as I was walking up to the office and said, you cured my wife of shingles, you know. And that's just one of the many things, you know. It helps you to sleep. It is good for your nervous system on all kinds of levels. There's this, it's antiviral. It has so many different functions, and it's as easy to grow as you could ever imagine, and a delightful herbal tea to drink, you know. And that's one of so many. I mean, the humble oat, you know, milky oats is such a powerful tonic. So good on so many levels, so easy to make, a great cover crop, you know, when it is in flower and making its pollen, the beneficial insects are feeding on it. You know, there are so many of these that we don't see as medicine, as gifts. We see them as just like, you know, a plant to another step. You know, you might have your lemon balm out there because you want a tea garden, you know. You might have your oats out there because you're trying to build your soil, you know, or maybe you grow oats to feed your animals. And yet those oats do so many other things for you, you know. And that's what I love. When you start investigating plants, you all of a sudden quickly learn that there is so much more to each and every one of them, you know. And there are so many then out in nature. Of course, Rishi, we have grown quite a patch of, and I'm going to mangle this because any word like this that I've read, I don't know how to pronounce perfectly, but Ganoderma lucidium is how I think you say it.
I think that's
Rishi that grows on oak, you know. We've grown a wonderful patch of that, you know, but it's kind of a mystery. It then stopped producing and we'll have to make more. And I know people that just go out and forage it. You know, it's in the woods. You can find it. You can get to know it.
A friend of mine he took a picture of himself. He was getting it. It was on a tree, just a whole row, and he was just popping them off, and he brought home a whole thing of reishi here. We're so blessed in the mountains to have all these medicinals. And I wanted to say, Pat, lemon balm is also recommended for radiation detox. And
Yep.
she was also getting radiation with the chemo, and that probably really helped her mitigate that and help, you know, remediate her through that process. So
Well, and that's the wonder of plants. I mean, and Joe made that point in his discussion for the video that we have coming up. You know, it's like when you use an herbal antiviral, the virus is having to deal with a whole array of compounds. You know, it may manage to dodge the so-called active ingredient, but get battered by all the other ingredients that are in there, such that eventually it becomes weakened enough that that active ingredient does affect it, you know. And, you know, as you know, I have a love-hate relationship with science as it is practiced in America today. You know, I love what it teaches me. I respect the discipline and the knowledge of scientists, but I also am troubled by the constant trend to take it down to what is the active ingredient and how do we pull that out and turn it into a pill, you know. And I get that scientists are sometimes befuddled, and frankly, I have to share that I'm not as knowledgeable as I wish I were. You know, I was actually at a social event with my doctor. We were talking about using elderberry and licorice and stuff like that for viruses, and she wanted a recipe. And I couldn't give her a recipe because I kind of just do it by intuition, you know. I said I put about 3 slices of licorice root, you know, about, you know, 2 cups of water with, you know, some elderberries and a few other things, and I decoct it down to about half as much, and then I just drink that as a tea. But I could see why she wanted a recipe, because she actually wanted to try it herself and figure out how to use it, and then maybe she would feel comfortable recommending it to people. So it's not like, you know, the scientists are in the wrong, but as a society, I think we're in the wrong because we put no research, no effort into looking about how to use these plants in their whole form, you know, which they're much more readily available. I mean, Lisa, I'm real excited to know that Artemisia annua, you know, one of Rocco's favorite plants, Sweet Annie, you know, a wonderful Artemisia that is so fragrant when you walk by it, and it makes
I love
lovely wreaths,
that. I
you know,
love that.
right?
Yeah.
That is highly effective against the SARS virus. You know, that's been documented. Now, how much work is being put into checking it out for SARS-CoV-2, the pathogen that's driving COVID-19? I don't know, but I did just get an email from Greta saying that a company called, I think, Artemison or something like that, which has been working with this particular Artemisia, has contracted with the Max Planck Institute to start looking at that, you know?
Oh, that's
But you know,
great.
it is great, but I'm afraid they're going to go ahead then and just go for the active ingredients again,
Yeah,
you
they
know?
start stripping out the constituents, and then they take away the whole plant. And then, of course, that is nothing to say of the indigenous way of acknowledging the spirit. Of course, plant spirit medicine being the
Right.
relationship with the plant itself as a living conscious entity, and all nature being aware and conscious. And that's where they're missing the entire boat, right? And you know, in the ancient people and in many cultures to this day, certain wisdom keepers were given the song for the plant and caring for
Mm-hmm.
it, and messages on how to use it as they're in sacred relationship. I mean, this is our connection with nature that we have yet to, we've got to, you know, open up again. Many people are in that relationship now, still or again, but so many more of us have yet. It's like a treasure waiting for us. That wealth, that health and wealth, the connecting with nature. So yeah, it's really, there's so much more to it than stripping a plant down to its parts, right? To strip nature down to its parts to see how it works, and then it's DOA, right? We've got to
So,
we have the functioning living whole is really how it works.
so what we can do, you know, as we talk about victory gardens, is know that Artemisia annua is incredibly easy to grow. And now that it's mentioned, maybe it'll be hard to find the seed, but the good news is the seed are tiny, they germinate readily. If anybody has some, they can give plants to other people so easily. We can share that around so readily.
It
And we
is a
can learn as a community how to use it for if we do have a next and maybe fearfully a worse round of this virus in the fall, or if
yeah,
it
it is
doesn't
a
even let up in
heavenly
the
feeder.
summer.
Now you're making me want to get some more. But boy, if you have that somewhere and you let the seed fall, you will have it
Yes,
everywhere the next year.
you
And
have
then
it
you walk
everywhere.
through the
And
garden, or you accidentally mow some, and your whole yard smells like heaven. It's just really, I love that. Like,
it
now
is a
I want to get
magical
more.
plant, yes.
Yeah.
And another one, Lisa, and we just did on Instagram, you know, and I encourage people to go to our Instagram channel too. Um, there's a video that then leads us back to the Resilience Daily video about how to start ginger. You know, I mean, I have been growing ginger for about 10 years. I never managed to find the seed ginger. I always buy the organic ginger at the food co-op. I look for the healthiest ones, especially if they have a little bit of growth showing on those growth points. You know, I put them in soil. Joe Hollis taught us to pour some warm water over it a little bit, and I let it kind of, you know, help break the dormancy, and then put them in a warm, moist place. And it won't be but a few weeks to a month or two, not even a month, 6 weeks at the most, before you'll have shoots coming up that you can then separate with roots, plant out, and grow your own ginger. And ginger is also antiviral and is specific to SARS.
Yeah.
So that's something that we can consume all the time. We can grow tons of it ourselves. And Lovell has taught us that it's a dynamic accumulator. And it actually fixes nitrogen. You know, so we're actually experimenting with planting ginger, interplanting it with our tomatoes, because ginger wants a little bit of shade, and it can go down deep and pull up those nutrients for the tomatoes. So those are things we could all be doing in our backyard gardens. They're simple to do. Anybody can do them. You know, it's not a great skill to get some ginger rooted. You know, you just want to get the healthiest ones you can in the store, and maybe grow it in a pot for a little while to make sure it doesn't have a disease. It'd be nice to be able to get good seed ginger, but it's rare and hard to find. So just go to the store and get it growing, and know that if you are using ginger, fresh ginger, you are actually giving the SARS-CoV-2 pathogen a hard time. It doesn't like it.
Right, right. And you know, it's so fun when you're a passionate gardener. And we've got people on our YouTube channel saying, yeah, they did that. They had successful plants, but it was too wet for them. So maybe not want to have those wet feet too often there. But if you really are a passionate gardener, you can find it like garden supplies at the produce section. You know, I was at the co-op and I found they had their little special table, you know, of discounted veggies that are kind of going south a little bit, but are still a lot of good stuff in there. And I found a whole bag of organic turmeric rhizomes. I mean, I'm ready to plant those turmeric. You know, it's a type of beautiful flowering plant, and turmeric and ginger, we can grow that. And turmeric is highly anti-inflammatory. I did my capstone nutrition project in college on that for wellness and in advanced anatomy and physiology. And that turmeric, I mean, it's anti-tumor in like 5 different ways. It actually dissolves the amyloid plaques that form in our brain in the area of North India, where people eat what is considered a regular daily sort of therapeutic amount, just about 400 milligrams per day in their regular diet of curries and things they're cooking with. There's less than 2% of any kind of dementia or Alzheimer's, basically non-existent because of its ability to clear the amyloid plaques in the brain. So turmeric is just, some people consider it the most powerful herb, but I mean, it is anti-inflammatory. It helps reduce pain, just wonderful for your body's inflammatory responses, which is also something that could be a challenge with these upper respiratory illnesses.
So yeah, and I love we got the feedback. Yes, as you're doing your Victory Garden, you're gonna get the biofeedback from nature, and you're gonna see some plants don't want to be where you put them, you know. But then that just gives you the information to look for another place. And if you're in a place like we are, Lisa, you know, when we did our herb class a few years ago, one of the attendees said, "Where's the mature herb garden?" I said, "It all turned black about 6 weeks ago," you know, because it was 2018 and we were in the wettest year on record, you know. And so what did I do for the class? I hauled as much sand and gravel as I can get into that bed to change that bed to a better draining bed. And sometimes that's what we need to do, you know, and the herbs are doing better now. I'm not losing quite so many.
You know,
we
Pat,
don't have the perfect climate for Mediterranean herbs, you know?
Yeah, oh, I love growing like a smudge garden, like with sage. I just got a few little white sage plants from Amy Hamilton of Appalachian Seeds, and I was so thrilled. She's got such amazing plants. She has been out to Big Sur a lot in the last few years, and she actually got the Artemisia from Big Sur. Very fragrant, lovely sage, sort of a smudge plant, you know, it smells wonderful. So I got one of those. I can't wait. But I learned a lot at our orcharding workshops. Of course, I attend every workshop Living Wet Farms has behind the camera, but that was such an enlightening moment for me, both with Michael Phillips, the apple grower, and also with Andrew Goodhart Brown, and also actually a little bit with Bob, you know, the
Anderson.
orchard guy. Yeah.
Anderson.
Talking about air shed. You know, it's not just the amount of sun, but you've got to have your air flowing for drier herbs, right? And I have one spot here in my garden where I could grow white sage and those Mediterranean herbs, and it's got air all around and a hill going down, and you just want that flow. And to think about that when you've got your plants not only in a place in your garden where it might be too wet or too dry or too sunny or too shady, but also how your air is flowing around there to prevent those molds during those wet, rainy times. And of course, a big issue with tomatoes, right? To keep that air.
There's a huge issue with tomatoes, definitely. And it's an issue with the herbs. And indeed, Lisa, originally, before we put the school where we have most of our classes, I had started to develop terrace beds on there. And that was one of the reasons. So we had that airflow for our herbs. But then we needed the school building. What else is new? We're humans, right? And so we lost one of the few places on this property here, what I affectionately call Mr. Ed, because it's the Mills River Educational Farm. We lost one of the few places where we could get some air drainage because we're essentially a bowl, and everything, you know, drops down to us. And that is why we have that challenge. And some people are just going to have that challenge, you know. And so we just did the workshop with Plant Savers and Bob Itis and the whole golden seal community. And I mentioned that my golden seal has never really thrived. And Bob said, "Pat, I've been to your place and it's really flat. You should do a raised bed." And so sometimes, you know, I think some people get like kind of tyrannized by raised beds. They think they have to have them, and they're, you know, they think they have to have a structure they don't know how to make or whatever. And I say, let it go. You know, you can raise it just by shoveling the soil from the pathway and renew it. It doesn't have to be that raised. But once in a while, for certain projects, maybe you do want to go ahead and really put a little bit of infrastructure in there and really raise that bed up to get more airflow, you know?
Yeah, Pat, I just want to tell our YouTube audience who does not know this yet, we are so thrilled. We had a Golden Seal Summit with Robert Itis of the North Carolina Ginseng and Golden Seal Company. You can check that out at ncgoldenseal.com. And we talked with Robert and a whole panel of fantastic experts on the topic about forest farming, about saving this amazing medicinal plant. And it's a huge, amazing panel, folks. It's a powerful presentation, and that is in process of being completed, and can't wait to be sharing that. So anybody who's wanting to learn more about forest farming and helping to protect golden seal and other wild medicinals that are in fact threatened from wildcrafting, over harvesting, we need to start growing it. And we have a whole conversation about the economics of that, the brass tacks of that, all the different arrays, different full spectrum across the board on that topic. So very excited that's coming out very soon.
Indeed. And, it taught me again, in that class, because some people mentioned that golden seal's endangered because of the demand and the wild harvesting of it. And unfortunately, the flooding of the market with the wild harvest then makes it not cost effective for people to grow it and sell it, So what we're doing is we're sacrificing the future of golden seal for a low price now. And that's so common in everything that gets grown, But a point that was made in that class is that there are so many other plants with the active ingredient of golden seal, which I probably will crucify again. Is it berberine?
Berberine.
Berberine, yeah. And that reminded me, that we're doing a stream restoration. And one of the plants that I so love that grows right on the water's edge all the time, and I'm sure is helping to hold the banks, is yellow root, and it's abundant in the mountains. And I asked that collection of wisdom, because I'm not that knowledgeable about it, is it hard to take cuttings? And they said, no, it's not. And so I'm inspired, and I am going to start hundreds of golden seal cuttings to plant along our stream for the stream restoration. Not golden seal, I'm sorry,
Yellow root.
And yellow root is a substitute for golden seal. And it's one that is so much easier for us to grow here in the acid soils of Western North Carolina. Golden seal takes, some more alkaline soils than we have, but the yellow root thrives, and it can be used in ways that are analogous, but I can't get that word right now. Analogous to golden seal. And we want to look at that all the time. It's like Joe teaching us about jagulan. Another plant that's so endangered in the mountains, so magical, is ginseng, and it is also over-harvested. It's very expensive. It's not that easy to grow. It takes a long time. You got to have the right conditions, and the deer want to eat it, and all kinds of things like that. Jagulan is a cucurbit and incredibly easy to grow, and yet has so many of the same qualities.
It has even more ginsenosides than ginseng by weight, and it's a vining, beautiful little green. You can pluck off a little, have a tea. And Pat, I'm so happy to say I finally got 2 jagulan plants again.
Right. Yeah.
I bought them from Robert Itis, and we did our social distancing a little bit, and they actually was having some people at the plant sale last week. Of course, the Asheville Herb Festival canceled, but several growers showed up: Amy Hamilton, Robert Itis, Peter Waskowitz of Watershed Forest Farm, and a few other folks. And it was great. So I got to go support my local growers, and I did get some jagulan. And Robert, he, just to give you an idea about ginseng and how long it takes, right? He sold a plant there. He had been growing it for 17 years.
Right.
And the guy walked away with, oh yeah, that was 17 years of that plant.
Right.
But you can grow that jagulan in one season and have plenty of ginsenoside.
You can root cuttings in a matter of weeks and pass it on to people, and it's been coming back in our front yard up in CeeLo for years now.
Wow.
And yet, I tend to naturally have low blood pressure. I had to be careful not to drink too much of it because my blood pressure was getting so low. It lowers blood pressure. It helps to balance the sugar. It's an adaptogen. So easy to grow. And can help to take the pressure off of these woodland medicinals. And that's what we want to learn, is that, the properties of plants are very special, but they're not exclusive. There are many plants that offer us the same solutions. And it is such a joy to learn them. you know that I'm a huge fan of the work of Stephen Harrod Booner. I really highly recommend his herbal antibiotics and his herbal antivirals. Two books that just are mainstays to me, you know, and it always give me solutions that I need that are plant-based in order to maintain my health, you know. And so I recommend that people go to their favorite resource. I don't want to say Stephen Harrod Booner is the only resource, but pay attention to the fact that nature has so many solutions for us, and our gardens can be filled with a huge array of foods and medicines, you know. And that's another thing that I'm hoping to encourage people in their victory gardens is to learn about other plants. I mean, yeah, everybody should have their tomatoes and their cucumbers. What is a garden without those things, without their summer squash, without so much squash to give away that they've got to sneak up on neighbors' porches, as Marge Piercy wrote a poem about, and leave it in the night, you know? Yes, there's the glory of all those, but there's also things like Malabar spinach, Egyptian spinach, longevity spinach, Okinawa spinach, 4 plants that are not at all spinach, but provide abundant greens that are so health-giving, you know? There are the weeds we just did, and you'll be able to find it on our Resilience Daily channel yesterday, a description of Galansoga and purslane, 2 common weeds in your garden that you can avail yourself of all summer long that are giving you the deep nutrition of greens. You know, greens are so healthy for us. Our cell walls depend on vitamin A to be strong. When our cell walls are strong, they're more able to resist viruses, and we can grow all this array of greens all summer long and make sure that our diets are full of them. And a lot of them are ones that people don't know, but we're going to strive to feature them on the Resilience Daily channel. We already did, Lisa, and I think that video has been up for a while, right? When we did the greens at the French Broad Food Co-op, that cooking class. Do you remember that one?
Yes, yes. There's so many great greens. Pat's a big advocate of more greens, and it's really great personally, and of course, fantastic for reducing triglycerides. It's a succulent, so you're also getting lots of juicy water, plant waters in there and plant salts, so very good for you. And yes, I just want to respond to someone on our channel. They're saying they would like to try their hand at growing black cohosh. Yes, that is over harvested as well. That is something that Robert Ives was selling a little bit, so we can start another impetus in forest farming, more black cohosh. It is in fact endangered, yeah, and very needed. So really a great opportunity to start more forest farming. And I highly recommend Dr. Janine Davis's book on that topic. You can look her up on growing forest medicinals, Dr. Janine Davis. Look that up.
And I can report, Lisa, that a few years back, Dr. Davis was moving her herb garden. And once they dug all the plants they wanted, they opened it up for the remnants for sale. And I got there quite late. Indeed, Bob, I just claimed that I took everything, and I had to say back to him, Bob, I scraped the bottom of the barrel. You got there when the barrel had been taken away. You know? But I took all those plants, it was about 2011, I think, and stuck them in a woody area on one of our properties, and just revisited that property with Greta. I haven't been there in a couple of years. And I was thrilled to say that the bloodroot has been multiplying wonderfully, and the cohosh has been multiplying wonderfully. The May apples, yes, the golden seal hanging on, the ginseng gone, and ramps. All those were actually, you know, the ones that I mentioned were doing quite well. So cohosh is not that hard to grow. I've also got one years ago at a natural products conference that I was taking part in, and put that in my. Well, I have a little patch in silo next to my ramp patch, which I inherited when we got the property, where I've established bloodroot and golden seal and cohosh, and it's my little woodland medicinal patch there. And the cohosh has thrived, so that's not a hard one. You know, golden seal, less success. I've got it, but it flowered for the first time after 15 years. You know, but the cohosh has been thriving there. You know, so yeah, we should definitely look to propagate these, look to get the propagated material from people who are acting responsibly. You know, I mean, anybody could just buy a bunch of ramps. I didn't see them for sale much this year because of the whole COVID-19 thing. But in the mountains, in my mind, you know, unfortunately, ramps are way too available. You know, you drive down the country roads and there are people, you know, no fault to them. They're doing what their families have always done, raise a little bit of money by collecting ramps. But of course, there are too many people now. And you can get a bunch of ramps for $3. I really wish they cost a lot more so that those people could still make the money they needed, but not have to take quite so many ramps out of the ground. You can take those ramps, eat the tops, and plant the bulbs and begin a patch.
That's what I did. Cherokee, and I really love the flowers. I mean, I just wanted to watch them flower. They're so beautiful, like this little peace lily with the burgundy, and just, oh, they're gorgeous flowers.
Well, and then Lisa, after they flower, this little nest of shiny black eggs.
Yes.
And so that is really, you want to basically, I noticed that Nate from Experimental Farmer Network, he actually had, their catalog has ramp seed collected by Dale Hendricks, wildcrafted, and that I recommend getting your propagated material that kind of way rather than buying, plants that have been over harvested, and then, learning where to, put those in. And probably your best bet is simply to find a good spot, a rich spot that's in a deciduous forest, that's got some moisture, and just putting those in the soil and letting them germinate on their own. I've tried starting them as seedlings, and it's too easy to let them dry out. They take about 18 months, and it's hard to keep your mind on something that long. And so I haven't been successful that way. I've counted on coworkers and stuff, and I think sometimes people lose track after a while. They think, oh, that's a plant that's not going to make it.
Right.
But if you just stick those seeds in the ground, they get their double dormancy, which ramps have. They have to first get 72 degrees to put their radicle out, and then they have to vernalize and get winter temperatures before they'll pop their cotyledons. But if you do that, you can start your own ramp patch, and it's another one that's endangered. And there's so many things like that. The really good history
workshop, Pat. We should do an endangered plant propagation workshop.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. I won't be the one to lead it, but I know exactly who to ask.
People.
I forget the name of her nursery. I got people asked me if I knew her, but they didn't mention her last name, so I didn't remember. But Jean Harrison used to be my extension agent up in Yancey County, and she's got a nursery, and she specializes in exactly that. So you know what? I think we just came up with one of our next classes.
Because that's so important, right? And then they'll get us more protecting nature, which is about what we need to do, to keep all the web of life intact. And Pat, I was going to say briefly, so for folks who want to learn and grow more medicinals, I need epazote right now, Pat. I don't know if you know where there's any plants, and I also want to pick up.
I bet you we have some in our greenhouse.
I love epazote. It's one of the most widely used medicinal plant in Mexico. But my granny made beans with it, and I just gotta have my epazote.
Yeah, sure. I totally get that. Yeah.
I found some seed on Strictly Medicinals. So if you want to look up some medicinal great seed that's good out there, strictlymedicinals.com. Also, rareseeds.com. That is Baker Creek Heirloom Seed Company, a wonderful one. And of course, Fedco has lots of great seeds too. But yeah, I was going to say it's really good to get some sustainably harvested things that you can and start growing more medicinals. I tried to get as many as I could out of this little Herbs for Resilience book growing. So far I have quite a few of these. I was able to find some wood betony plants at the herb sale there, quite a few medicinals, and ashwagandha and holy basil, of course, I always grow, and want to add to those lists. So Pat, I want to try to wrap it up soon. I don't know if anyone has any more questions, but let's see, please spell the ginseng replacement. It's a Jiaogulan. It's I believe Jiaogulan.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, Jiaogulan.
Yeah, that's a total
Finally,
winner.
those spelling bees come in handy. Me being as.
By the way, Mountain Gardens will probably sell you those plants. So if Joe Hollis he's actually got two versions. He's got a sweet and a bitter one, which is pretty fascinating, because I noticed with the one that I had that if I steeped it for half an hour or so, it had a sweetness that was plant-like, not as strong as stevia, but none of the stevia aftertaste,
Right.
And so I actually took to making my Jiaogulan as a source of sweetness for my tea,
Yes.
Anyways, Lisa, just quickly, I wanted to mention as far as medicinal herbs, restoration seeds is another one, and then of course the Experimental Farm Network. Both of those.
That was the other one I was going to mention, Pat. I'm so glad we finish each other's thoughts on a regular basis. Pat and I do a radio show on livingwebfarms.org. Check it out. It's under multimedia. It's also on the homepage. And we constantly have synchronicities, and that's what I was going to say. If you really want to get some interesting plants that are rooted in ancient indigenous culture and are naturally selected for disease and really rare, interesting things, check out Experimental Farm Network. Experimental Farm Network look that up. I think it might be .org, but Experimental Farm Network, Nathan Kleinman. We did have a workshop with him. You can check our channel, search for it there, and you'll catch all the links as well as the inside story on many things he's growing. One of the things I grew in the last few years is quinquina. I have some plants started. It's from Bolivia, and it's sort of used like sort of like a cilantro, but that thing was the most majestic and stately plant. Wonderful medicinal, I'm sure, as well, because it turns almost a blue color and really grew all the way into late November. I was amazed. But yeah, there's so many cool plants there at the Experimental Farm Network. So have fun with those seeds. I think that's the most fun part for me, is starting new interesting plants and cultivating them. So much
Right,
fun.
and then Mountain Gardens. Don't forget Mountain Gardens. Joe Hollis. He's got an incredible plant list. You can find it on his website.
Yes, mountaingardensherbs.com, mountaingardensherbs.com. That he is like a wizard of Chinese and herbal medicine here in the mountains. So I just want to let the folks on our channel that are tuned in now know, because most of them don't know, we do a live radio show every week, but we do record that, and you can have your questions. So if you ever have a question for Pat, as you can see, he is a great fountain of wisdom here on all these topics, and we love riffing on all of it. So send us your questions anytime. You can forward them to Pat at livingwebfarms.org, and he'll forward them along to me, and we will be able to answer them on the air. You can either join us live through a Zoom meeting that we do for the show, or you can just email your question and have him and us address it there on the show. So
check out our new Resilience Daily channel on YouTube, and also our Instagram account, where we're posting insect pictures and making sure that you know what's showing up on our other channels. And next week, the Victory Garden, you don't want to miss John's workshop. I mean, I'm sure John was heartbroken to have the problems he had this week, but it's going to be, he is a great teacher, and he's going to empower you to get your Victory Garden up and running and diverse and productive. And he's going to do it with the principles of permaculture, biodynamics, and regenerative farming. So I highly recommend that workshop next week. Sorry we couldn't deliver it now, but hopefully we kept you inspired with this little impromptu discussion.
Yes, and Pat, I just wanted to say, we had a question here where someone was saying mycelium is large. Do plants communicate on an alchemical level? Well, you know what? We have covered this on the show so many times. It is so exciting how plants communicate. Plants communicate through root exudates, and also, through all of the different things that are being carried through that mycelial hypofungal network. They are actually able to communicate when another tree is sick. Other trees will send nutrients to help that elder tree, or all kinds of communications are going on with plants, including you getting out there in the garden and communicating with your plants. We are so similar with DNA to plants. We totally have the ability to send conscious information through frequency and vibration. It is proven with physics, right? We know this, and you have a big effect out there. If it's not too cold, get your feet there, get out there, get grounded, restore your health and wellness, and enjoy. We look forward to hearing from you.
I have to mention this now because we brought that up. I found actually my battered, almost illegible original copy of The Web Below, an article by Carol Zimmer. I can't even see when the date was, but I know it was probably the late 90s, where I first learned about all those relationships. It was an article in Discover magazine. And I bet if you go online, you can find it. And it's the one where she plants out the plants and then puts carbon, radioactive carbon in to see where all the nutrients go. And it was sitting there on my desk. And so you brought that up. It's The Web Below, and the article is by Carol Zimmer from Discover magazine. I recommend it if you want to get one of the first shots across the bow about the fact that there's more intelligence than we understand in nature.
Yes, and that the life in the soil is so essential to protect, so that everything can communicate effectively, so that the nutrients can properly form in our food, so that we can be nourished in this wholesome process of being connected through the soil health to our health and the planet. Well, it's been a really great joy here, and yes, bumblebees can tell when a plant's been pollinated. They can sense all of the different things. Check out paramagnetism as well. Get some rock dust in your root zones if you can, to spread the light. Actually, photonic light exchange is enabled through rock dust, paramagnetic rock dust. We know about that at the farm too. So always so much fun to talk about. We look forward to our real Victory Garden workshop soon with John. And please share our channel with everyone you can. Let's plant that seed of gardening in everyone's hearts. And thanks, Pat, for being here with us today. And thank you, everyone on the stream. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.